Every star has a shadow, and CJ Stroud's brilliance on the field is matched only by the battles he's faced off it. From the small apartment above a storage facility where his family lived, to the heartbreak of losing his father to the prison system, Stroud's path to NFL stardom has been anything but smooth. For Stroud, football wasn't just a game, it was survival. It was his lifeline out of a world filled with poverty, doubt, and pain. But his success story isn't just about perfecting his throws or breaking records. It's about the mental strength he built to overcome adversity. How did Stroud rise from the shadows to become a leader and an inspiration? And what can his story teach us about the power of resilience? This is the unseen side of CJ Stroud's journey, one that proves greatness is forged through struggle. CJ Stroud's story begins far from the bright lights of the NFL. In a small apartment, perched above a storage facility in Rancho Cucamonga, California, it was a far cry from the suburban homes and private training facilities many young athletes grow up with. For Stroud, his childhood was defined by financial struggles, cramped spaces, and an unyielding determination to overcome the odds. The youngest of 4 siblings, CJ had a close bond with his father, Coleridge Bernard Stroud III. To CJ, his dad wasn't just a parent, he was a mentor, a best friend, and his biggest supporter. Coleridge had dreams for his son, dreams he reinforced with simple yet powerful lessons. He often made CJ write checks for $1 million, telling him, "You'll be a first-round draft pick in any sport you choose." These weren't just words, they were seeds of belief, planted in CJ's mind during their long drives to tournaments and games. But those dreams came to a halt in 2011 when Coleridge revisited old battles with substance abuse. What followed was devastating. A phone call from jail that shattered CJ's world. The man who had been his rock, his motivator, was suddenly absent. "I was angry," Stroud admitted years later, "mad at the world," asking why. For a 13-year-old boy, losing his father wasn't just about losing support, it was about losing a sense of security and belonging. CJ's mother, Kimberly, carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. After his father's absence turned their lives upside down, she became the family's sole provider, juggling multiple jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. Some nights, the exhaustion was so overwhelming that she would collapse into silence, her body too tired to even speak. Yet, her presence spoke volumes. For CJ, seeing his mother's sacrifices was both a source of pain and power. There were moments when homelessness loomed like a shadow over their lives, and Kimberly, faced with impossible choices, even considered sending her children to live with other families for their safety. But she never gave up. Each day, she pushed through her own struggles, finding strength not just for herself, but for her children. Her sacrifices were more than acts of survival. They were acts of love that taught CJ the true meaning of perseverance. Kimberly's unwavering belief in him, even during their darkest moments, became his foundation. Late at night, after long shifts, Kimberly would gather her remaining energy to sit with CJ and remind him of his potential. "You've got a gift, CJ. Don't let this world take it from you." Those words weren't just encouragement, they were a call to action. They became etched into his soul, driving every practice, every game, every step forward. For CJ, honoring her sacrifices wasn't just a goal, it was his purpose. A way to repay the belief she never stopped showing him, even when the world seemed to offer none. For anyone who has ever relied on a loved one for strength, or been that source of hope for someone else, today's story is a reminder of the bonds that make us stronger together. As life got tougher, Stroud turned to football not just as a sport, but as an escape. The field became his sanctuary, a place where he could channel his anger, sadness, and confusion into something constructive. It was there, on the gridiron, that CJ began to discover not only his talent, but also the resilience that would come to define his career. But even with football as an outlet, the emotional scars remained. Seeing other kids with their fathers at games was a constant reminder of what he had lost. Yet CJ refused to let bitterness consume him. Instead, he poured himself into his craft, studying the game and dreaming of a future where he could provide his family with the stability they had always longed for. It's hard to imagine the pressure of carrying such a heavy emotional load at such a young age. But for CJ Stroud, These experiences didn't just test his character, they forged it. The quarterback we see today isn't just the product of his physical abilities. He's the embodiment of grit, sacrifice, and an unshakable commitment to rise above the hardships. As C.J. Stroud leaned into football as his escape from life's hardships, the game quickly became more than just a hobby, it was a lifeline. While other kids saw football as recreation, C.J. treated it as a path to something greater, a way to lift his family out of the struggles that had defined their lives for so long. But even with his natural talent, the road ahead was far from easy. High school brought with it a new level of competition and a harsh reality. Talent alone wouldn't be enough. C.J. wasn't one of those kids who had college recruiters knocking on his door from day one. Instead, he started high school as an unknown, overlooked by scouts and dismissed by many who didn't see the potential buried beneath his quiet determination. It wasn't because he lacked ability those who trained with him saw flashes of brilliance, but because he lacked exposure. Unlike the kids with access to private trainers or flashy summer camps, CJ's training resources were humble at best. Still, what CJ lacked in resources, he made up for in relentless commitment. Without access to elite coaching, he took it upon himself to learn. Hours were spent watching and rewatching YouTube videos of NFL quarterbacks, analyzing how they moved, how they read defenses, and how they stayed calm under pressure. He practiced in local parks with secondhand gear, fine-tuning his mechanics until they felt like second nature. "I didn't have all the fancy stuff," he would later say, "but I had work ethic, and that's all I needed." His growth wasn't immediate though. Early in his high school career, CJ struggled to stand out. Competing against peers who had polished techniques and big-time connections, he often felt like he was playing catch-up. On some days, the pressure seemed overwhelming, and he questioned whether he'd ever get his shot. But every time doubt crept in, he thought about his family, the long hours his mother worked, the sacrifices they had all made, and the future he dreamed of giving them. Giving up wasn't an option. By his junior year, CJ began to turn heads. His calm demeanor in the pocket, ability to read defenses, and natural accuracy caught the attention of his coaches. On the field, he started to shine a reflection of the resilience he had learned at home. His mother, Kimberly, had always found ways to support the family, despite working multiple jobs and enduring unimaginable exhaustion. Her unwavering strength became CJ's anchor, a quiet reminder that even in the face of struggle, greatness could emerge. Inspired by her sacrifices, CJ poured everything he had into football, determined to turn their shared dreams into reality. That belief fueled him through the toughest moments. The pressure to perform in games, the lingering financial struggles at home, and the constant comparisons to more privileged athletes could have broken him. Instead, CJ thrived on it. Pressure, he realized, wasn't something to avoid, it was something to embrace. Pressure makes diamonds, he'd tell himself before every game. The turning point came during his senior year when CJ earned a spot in the prestigious Elite 11 quarterback competition, a showcase for the best high school QBs in the nation. For the first time, he was competing on a national stage against players who had been groomed for this moment for years. The lights were brighter, the stakes higher, but CJ didn't flinch. His performances didn't just prove he belonged, they redefined him as one of the top prospects in the country. From that moment, everything changed. Recruiters who had once ignored him were now flooding his inbox. He went from an overlooked kid in Southern California to one of the most sought-after quarterbacks in the nation. Yet, even as the attention grew, CJ remained grounded. For him, it wasn't just about proving the doubters wrong, it was about proving himself right. "I knew I had what it took," he said. "I just needed the chance to show it." When CJ Stroud arrived at Ohio State, it wasn't just a new chapter, it was a leap into a world unlike anything he had known. Ohio State wasn't merely a football program, it was a dynasty. The expectations weren't just high, they were sky high. Every player who wore the scarlet and gray carried the weight of generations of fans, alumni, and traditions. For CJ, who had already overcome so much in his life, this wasn't just another challenge, it was a crucible. As a freshman in 2020, CJ stepped onto a campus 2,000 miles away from his home in Rancho Cucamonga, California. The warm, Sunny days of his childhood felt like a distant memory as he adjusted to the biting cold of Ohio winters and the unfamiliarity of living so far from his family. It was tough being away, he would later admit. I didn't have my mom or my family. I had to learn how to stand on my own. The loneliness was overwhelming at times. Nights in his dorm felt quiet and isolating, a stark contrast to the vibrant chaos of his home life. CJ missed his mother's encouragement, his siblings' laughter, and even the little routines that had anchored him through years of adversity. But he knew why he was there. He reminded himself every day of the sacrifices his family had made to give him this opportunity. Failure wasn't an option, not for himself, not for them. But the pressure of being part of a powerhouse program quickly began to mount. Even as a backup quarterback, CJ felt the intensity of Ohio State's culture. The playbooks were intricate, the competition fierce, and the standards unforgiving. Every drill, every snap, every moment on the practice field was a test. CJ poured himself into the work, spending endless hours studying film and memorizing plays. His dedication was unmatched, but the mental strain began to take a toll. The following year, when CJ was named the starting quarterback, the spotlight intensified. The pressure was no longer hypothetical, it was real, and it was relentless. From the very first game, every throw he made, every decision on the field was dissected by fans, analysts, and critics alike. The first few weeks of the season were rocky. CJ struggled to find his footing, and the doubters wasted no time making their opinions known. Social media became a battlefield, forums and comment sections filled with vitriol, calling for him to be benched, questioning his talent, and even attacking him personally. The criticism wasn't just harsh, it was cruel. CJ later revealed that after one particularly tough game, he received death threats. For a young man barely out of his teens, it was an unimaginable burden to bear. In an era where mental health is finally gaining the attention it deserves, CJ's story highlights the toll of constant pressure and criticism. His journey illustrates that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a source of strength. By seeking support from his family, coaches, and faith, he turned moments of despair into stepping stones. For anyone struggling to carry the weight of expectations, Stroud's ability to persevere reminds us that seeking help is not giving up, it's rising up. You try to block it out, he said, but it's hard when people are coming at you from every direction. Those words reveal the immense strain he faced, both on and off the field, as he tried to balance the expectations of an entire fan base with his own personal growth. What many people failed to see was the human being behind the helmet. CJ wasn't just a quarterback, he was a young man navigating one of the most pivotal chapters of his life. For him, the criticism wasn't merely about football, it struck at his sense of self-worth. There were moments when the weight of it all felt unbearable, but CJ refused to let the negativity define him. Instead, he turned to the foundations that had carried him through his toughest moments: his family, his faith, and his unrelenting determination. Behind the scenes, his mother, Kimberly, continued to be his anchor. From miles away, she would call to offer words of encouragement, reminding him of his strength and resilience. His coaches at Ohio State also played a pivotal role, not just as mentors, but as protectors. They understood the unique pressures CJ faced and made sure he had the support he needed, not just as an athlete, but as a person. One defining moment came after a particularly brutal game. CJ stood before reporters, visibly exhausted but resolute. Instead of deflecting blame or lashing out at his critics, he spoke with humility and honesty. He admitted his struggles, acknowledged the pressure, and promised to work harder. That vulnerability didn't just resonate with fans, it marked a turning point in his leadership. CJ wasn't just a quarterback, he was a fighter, a role model, and a young man unafraid to confront his challenges head-on. As the season progressed, CJ began to find his rhythm. His performances improved, silencing many of his doubters. But his growth wasn't just physical, it was deeply mental. He worked with sports psychologists, leaned on his faith, and found solace in moments of prayer and reflection. Slowly but surely, he transformed adversity into fuel. Every harsh comment became motivation, every tough game a lesson. He wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. By the time CJ Stroud's college career came to an end, he wasn't just a quarterback who had weathered the storm, he was a symbol of resilience. He proved that mental toughness and emotional vulnerability weren't opposites but complementary forces that could coexist. He turned fear into focus, setbacks into stepping stones, and criticism into a catalyst for greatness. But perhaps most importantly, CJ's time at Ohio State wasn't just about football. It was about becoming the man he was meant to be: a leader, a fighter, and a beacon of hope for anyone who has ever faced doubt. The battles he fought at Ohio State didn't end when he left for the NFL. They became the foundation for the legacy he continues to build today, a legacy of perseverance, strength, and unshakable resolve. When CJ Stroud's name was called as the second overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, it wasn't just a moment of triumph, it was the culmination of a lifetime of perseverance. But stepping into the league as a top pick came with its own set of challenges. Stroud wasn't just carrying the weight of his dreams, he was shouldering the hopes of an entire franchise, the Houston Texans. For years, the Texans had struggled to find stability, enduring a revolving door of players, coaches, and controversies. Once a playoff contender, the franchise had fallen into disarray. Stroud was expected to be the quarterback who could turn it all around. But few people outside the organization truly understood the uphill battle he faced. The pressure of being a rookie quarterback is immense. You're not only learning a complex playbook, but also adapting to the speed and intensity of the NFL A-League, where mistakes are amplified and patience is scarce. For Stroud, these challenges were compounded by the expectation that he would be the Texans' savior. Fans wanted results immediately, and critics were quick to analyze his every move. Yet CJ approached this new chapter with the same mentality that had carried him through his toughest moments at Ohio State. "Every challenge has a purpose," he said in an interview. "You either let it break you, or you let it build you." And true to his word, Stroud faced the demands of the NFL with a blend of humility and determination. The first few weeks of his rookie season weren't perfect. There were growing pains, missed reads, interceptions, and the harsh reality of leading a rebuilding team. But even in those moments, Stroud's resilience shone through. Teammates and coaches noticed his unwavering commitment to improvement. He was often the first to arrive at the practice facility and the last to leave, spending hours reviewing game film and working on his craft. "He's not just a quarterback," a teammate remarked. "He's a leader." Off the field, Stroud's character continued to shine. He made it a point to connect with his teammates, building bonds that extended beyond football. He understood that success wouldn't just come from his arm strength or decision making, it would come from creating a culture of trust and unity within the team. "Football is about more than talent," he said. "It's about heart, about fighting for the guy next to you." As the season progressed, something remarkable began to happen. Stroud started finding his rhythm. His throws became sharper, his decisions more confident. He led the Texans to unexpected victories, showing flashes of brilliance that reminded everyone why he was the second pick. But for CJ, these moments weren't about proving the doubters wrong. They were about honoring the sacrifices of his family and the journey that brought him here. One particularly memorable game came midway through the season. Facing a division rival, Stroud delivered a clutch performance, throwing for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. The crowd roared with every play, and by the end of the game, the Texans had pulled off a thrilling victory. But it wasn't just the stats that stood out, it was the way Stroud carried himself. Even in the game's most tense moments, he remained calm and composed, a reflection of the mental strength he had cultivated over the years. Through it all, CJ never forgot his roots. He often spoke about his mother and the sacrifices she made to support him, as well as the lessons he learned from his father, even in his absence. These experiences, he said, were the foundation of his resilience. "I've been through the fire," he once said, "and it's made me stronger." Now, as he continues to navigate his rookie season, CJ Stroud is not just rebuilding a franchise, he's redefining what it means to lead. His journey serves as a reminder that greatness isn't just about talent. It's about heart, determination, and the courage to keep going, no matter the odds. If CJ Stroud's story has inspired you, imagine the impact his journey could have on others. Don't miss the chance to share this incredible narrative by liking this video and subscribing for more stories about the human side of sports. Every like and subscription helps us bring you closer to the athletes who define resilience, grit, and heart. C.J. Stroud's journey is far from over, but it has already become a testament to the power of perseverance. From a small apartment in Rancho Cucamonga to the bright lights of the NFL, his life is a reminder that success is rarely a straight line. It's a winding path, filled with heartbreak, sacrifice, and moments that test the very core of who you are. What sets Stroud apart isn't just his talent on the field, it's his strength off it. The ability to face adversity head-on, to embrace vulnerability, and to grow stronger through every challenge has shaped him into the player and person he is today. In an era where mental health is finally getting the attention it deserves, Stroud's story stands as a beacon of hope for athletes and fans alike. But perhaps the most profound lesson from CJ's journey is this: greatness is not about never falling, it's about the courage to rise every time you do. Stroud has stumbled, faced criticism, and carried burdens many of us can only imagine. Yet, with every step, he's proven that resilience isn't a trait you're born with, it's a skill you build one struggle at a time. As CJ continues to lead the Texans and carve out his legacy, one thing is clear: his impact will extend far beyond the scoreboard. He's not just shaping a franchise, he's inspiring a generation to see strength, not as the absence of struggle, but as the willingness to confront it. So as you think about CJ's journey, ask yourself, what would you do in the face of such adversity? How would you respond when the world doubted you? And most importantly, how can stories like his change the way we view success, not just in sports, but in life? Because C.J. Stroud's story is more than a football journey, it's a life lesson we all can learn from. C.J. Stroud's love for football began in the dusty fields of Southern California. But for him, the game wasn't just a pastime, it was survival. Growing up in a small apartment above a storage facility, surrounded by financial uncertainty and personal challenges, CJ found solace in the sport. For many, football is just a game, but for CJ, it was a sanctuary, a lifeline, and a ticket to a brighter future. Yet, Stroud's journey to success was anything but straightforward. In high school, he wasn't the type of athlete to dominate headlines. Unlike other top prospects who had scholarship offers from Division I programs before they even entered high school, TJ remained in the shadows. Coaches didn't see him as a sure thing, and scouts often overlooked him. The road to recognition felt endless, but what CJ lacked in immediate stardom, he made up for in sheer determination. His training didn't involve private coaches or state-of-the-art facilities. Instead, it was makeshift and self-driven. With old equipment and limited resources, CJ turned to the internet. Studying YouTube videos of legendary quarterbacks like Drew Brees, he dissected their mechanics, memorized their movements, and practiced tirelessly. Every drill, every throw, every moment on the field was a step toward proving himself. As he poured his energy into the game, football began to reveal CJ's natural talent. His calm demeanor in the pocket, ability to read defenses, and pinpoint accuracy were undeniable. On the field, he began to shine, and those around him started to notice. But while CJ's athletic abilities flourished, his off-the-field life was a stark contrast. At home, the struggles of his family weighed heavily on him. His mother, Kimberly, worked tirelessly to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table, often juggling multiple jobs. Bills piled up, and there were times when the threat of homelessness loomed. Some nights, CJ would return from practice to see his mother physically and emotionally exhausted, yet still offering a smile and words of encouragement. He didn't just play football for himself. He played for her, for his family, for the belief that their sacrifices would one day pay off. The weight of that responsibility could have crushed him, but instead, it fueled his determination. "I didn't want to let them down," he later said. "I knew what was on the line." But adversity wasn't done testing CJ. As he climbed the ranks in high school football, the pressure to perform became a constant companion. Every game felt like a referendum on his future, every throw a chance to either rise or falter. Stroud wasn't just competing against opponents on the field, he was battling doubts, critics, and the ever-present fear of failure. Yet, instead of succumbing, CJ thrived under the weight of expectation. Pressure, he discovered, could be his greatest teacher, A turning point came during his senior year. CJ was given the opportunity to compete on a national stage against some of the best high school players in the country. The lights were brighter, the stakes higher than anything he'd experienced before. And yet, CJ didn't flinch. Game after game, he delivered. It wasn't just his physical skills that stood out, it was his poise, his ability to stay calm and execute under immense pressure. Recruiters began to take notice. He was no longer just the overlooked kid from Rancho Cucamonga. He was emerging as a quarterback with real potential. Yet, with recognition came a new wave of challenges. Comparisons to other rising stars were inevitable, and critics questioned whether CJ had the tools to succeed at the next level. Many of his peers came from backgrounds filled with privilege and resources: private trainers, elite camps, and support systems built for success. CJ's path, by contrast, was marked by grit and struggle. These comparisons could have rattled him, but CJ chose a different response. Every doubt, every critique became fuel for his fire. He used the skepticism to push himself harder, to refine his skills further, and to silence the noise with his performances. "I've always had to prove myself," he said. "That's nothing new to me." By the time CJ committed to Ohio State, he had transformed from an underdog into a symbol of perseverance. His story wasn't just about athleticism, it was a testament to the power of hard work and mental toughness. CJ Stroud had shown that even in the face of overwhelming odds, it was possible to rise, to overcome, and to carve a path toward greatness. But as he prepared to leave for college, CJ knew that the battles he had faced so far were only the beginning. The next phase of his journey would test him in ways he couldn't yet imagine. And if there was one thing he had learned, it was this: adversity wasn't something to fear, it was something to embrace.